Welcome to Realm IQ Sessions, featuring conversations on AI with AI founders, AI leaders, and experts from around the globe covering the intersection of media, technology, Hollywood, and marketing. Please give us a follow and subscribe. This is our host, Curt Doty.
Hey there, newbies and good people. Yes, it's been a while, but we're going to close out our season 3 with a series of interviews that I find most exciting. The series is called CLOWD Masters. We're talking with leading AI filmmakers from around the world. And yes, it's all about the CLOWD Film Fest now. So these guests are curated either by being one of our many judges, or they're a contestant in the competition, or they're simply doing amazing things with their craft. So for today's interview, this gentleman has already grabbed the headline from a recent Hollywood Reporter article on him. And I quote here, "Did a 54-year-old nonprofit worker just use AI to become the next Charlie Kaufman? The very curious case of Robert Gaudette." So we're going to be talking to this guy. So Robert is a Canadian filmmaker, an AI creative technologist, and former photographer known for emotionally driven, visually distinctive storytelling. Very important in AI filmmaking. His short film, A Face Only a Mother Could Love, won the Grand Prix prize at the 2026 Runway AI Film Festival. And he also received Best Picture at Australia's Omni Film Festival. He developed cinematic work that combines emerging technology with deeply human stories. So we want to welcome him. Let's listen in on this conversation. Robert, how are you? Thanks for being on the show. What are you doing today besides just talking with me?
Yeah, thanks, Curt. Thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here. Working away, working on some AI stuff for a new client that I have. You know, it's been a whirlwind for a little bit since the film came out. And yeah, it's been a wonderful experience.
Well, you know, why don't you tell us about your film? Because it's entered into our little contest here, and it's just really fabulous and obviously winning awards. And tell us about that journey and how surprised you might have been at the success that it's had.
Yeah, and you nailed it. The surprise is hard to put into words. I created it as a personal project. It really is one of the first short films that I've created in AI. And I attribute the timing of that, you know, the technology moved along and finally reached a level I thought I could use it, you know, to storytell and maybe try and share something more human than the content I had been producing before. So I had an idea for a story. I knew the arc that I wanted to put together, but I didn't have the characters nailed down or, you know, the very specific details of it. So as a personal project, I started to iterate characters, and I found Marcel, or he found me, you know, through the iterative process. And that helped to inform, you know, the details of the script writing. And from there, it became quite easy. I mean, he really inspired me in terms of how the rest of the story flushed out. I knew the arc. I knew I wanted it to be a love story. I wanted it to be about somebody who had a very challenging life. And within 8 minutes, I also knew that I would probably not have enough time to do enough character development. So I chose Marcel's facial disfigurement, you know, as a way that the audience would immediately understand, you know, the way society has treated them. And I got a lot of gifts, you know, from the universe in terms of the way this came together. Yeah. And so I was really pleased with the result. I felt I had something special. So I let it out into the world and entered it into your competition, and it's history from there.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the Runway Award, because it was a pretty huge cash reward and, you know, amongst some stiff competition. Because they're, you know, fairly mature as a competition. And so a lot of entries, and you won. I mean, my gosh. And I think it was really a terrific statement in terms of emotional storytelling and how that is winning. We've gone through, you know, a few years of, they call it AI slap. I call it, you know, cyberpunk, terrorism, exploitation, robots, cyborgs. It's like, really? Aren't there any other stories out there besides just all that stuff? And it's like, you created it. You did it. And so I really, really applaud you. So tell me about that journey in terms of the festival, because what a story. What a story.
So it's interesting. I've been doing AI for about 3.5 years full time. but almost all in pre-production, and that really has been because of the limitations of the tools, over that time. Starting now, to look at doing some finished product, in very specific ways, as bigger productions and production companies look to integrate AI. So I really hadn't had external validation for any of the work that I've done. Almost all the pre-production is under NDA, so I haven't even been able to share it with folks other than my clients. So when I submitted it, I thought I had something special, but it was really from a subjective position. I thought I had something special, but I had nothing to infer like what the quality was outside of my own viewpoint of it. So I entered it, and when I was selected, it automatically felt like validation. Like just even getting into the festival felt like a big win for me to have somebody else or a panel of people, say, this is worthy of being in our competition. Then I had an opportunity to watch the films of the competitors, and I didn't know where I sat, in that list of things. Again, from my own subjective viewpoint, I thought maybe I was in the upper end of it in terms of, maybe my content, I thought, slotted into the festival world in a way that, some other brilliant work, is magnificent, but there are different stories that fit different platforms. And then I watched Costa Verde, and I was really sweating it because I thought that was a fantastic film, a brilliant film that talked about, human experience and showed you from the eyes of a boy what a summer was like. So I knew that was a really special one too, amongst others. There were so many great ones. And then going to the festival, my wife and I traveled to New York and sat in the audience, and what an experience that was. One thing that I noticed that really threw me was the audience had been very engaged and responsive to the films they were watching. Lots of humor, lots of oohs and ahs. But when my film came on, everyone went quiet. There was even though there's humor in my film, I was really surprised that there wasn't a lot of laughter happening. So I had no idea what was going on until the end. And then, we got a really big applause. And so again, what a roller coaster, just filled with, self-doubt and all of that, while you're sitting there and other people are taking in your content. And then to win it was unbelievable. I knew I knew rationally the top 10 all got awards.
Yeah.
But as they counted down and there was only one spot remaining and they hadn't mentioned the film yet or the film's title or my name, my brain started to go into fight or flight. It was like, well, maybe one of us didn't win a prize, And then when they called it, it was pure disbelief and just real happiness, from my wife and I, just to, be able to take part in that and to see people react to something that's so contentious. You get love and hate online. So to be in a room where everybody was kind of on your side was a wonderful experience.
Well, that calls to mind this community, this AI filmmaking community, which is pretty unique and I feel special. And it's very interesting to be part of it and participate and support it. What have you found after the festival of your acceptance into the community and support, camaraderie? Congratulations. What has that been like?
Yeah. So immediately after the event and even prior to the event, the opportunity to meet the other folks that had films in the festival was nice. It didn't feel highly competitive. It really did feel like a community. I think everybody was rooting for each other. And then afterwards, there were immediate connections and lots of conversation and back and forth. And hey, what are you doing? Just friendships, I would say, developing. Even though we're all working independently of each other, I think there'll be a lot of crossover opportunities. Things are so new and small. A lot of the projects that come down the pipe, you need other artists to help you execute. And so I think that networking is key to this community, and people seem willing to share a lot more, than you would in traditional filmmaking. So that's been a nice response.
Yeah.
So far.
Well, yeah. Where else do you get tips on filmmaking other than on LinkedIn and YouTube of everyone sharing their experiments, which we've gone through a few years of experiments, right? To say, hey, take one scene or a couple scenes, and this is what the technology does now. I'm playing with this, and this is how I did it. These are the prompts. Virtual college of information where people willingly shared, and with that excitement and information that has been valuable to everyone around the world. And my observations are, yeah, we went through this experimentation. We went from 2 to 3 seconds and mid journey to now like even 10 to 15 seconds with seed dance, and it's just and then omnidirections and all kinds of expansion of the opportunity. Where there was this, I think, just within the last year, all of a sudden the hacks and the experimenters kind of fell to the wayside, and traditional storytellers came in and said, I think I can tell a story with this, just like your journey is like, yeah, I was working on this a while and it kind of evolved, and then all of a sudden it became a true storytelling medium, and people were posting these short films. And that was a major transition from the experimentation mode, which again, there are a lot of haters during that period, and there's still haters because they're seeing, the threat, but I choose to see the opportunity. And so we're at an amazing point right now where, truly gifted veterans in filmmaking or advertising or creative direction, designers, writers now have the tools to tell stories that they couldn't before. Whether that was through client work, which you said, yeah, you can't even show the work because you're under NDA, where all of a sudden these creative people are confronted with, I get to tell my own story. What is my look, or what is my POV? What am I writing about? And, it created a terrific opportunity and somewhat of an identity crisis for creative people, because it's like, whoa, I get to figure out what my creativity is versus my clients. And that's been that has unleashed a slew of really cool videos and movies happening all over the world. And so here we are now, 3.5 years into prompting with words, and now we're having conversations with agents to create interesting workflows to create these fantastic results. There's been a lot of hype, right? There's always been hype around the valuations of these tech companies. There's been hype around these AI studios that are popping up in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and the VC community investing hundreds of millions of dollars into studios. And yet, with all that investment here, you just did it on your own. You created a film that emotionally connected, shown in a theater where there was, a breathtaking response by the audience that just accepted the story and were moved, and you were applauded. You did it on your own. You didn't need a studio. You didn't need distribution. You didn't need any of the hype machine out there. You just went and did it. And that's fantastic. It just shows the kind of solopreneur spirit of the opportunity that AI in video and film is bringing to people like you.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting phenomenon that's happening right now. And I'll tie back into it at the end of my answer, because I think this is a stage we're going through. To your earlier comments about how willing people are to share with each other, I think that all goes to the fact that people are attracted to the democratization of the ability to tell stories. And that's what the tool represents to a lot of folks. There's a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of challenges to be able to tell your stories in a way that an audience can resonate with. I mean, I've always written, so I could take my short stories and I could publish them to a blog, but in this day and age, it's not the optimal way to connect with people anymore. I think they want visual entertainment. They want to enjoy the content you make in a very specific way. And so I think these tools allow people to do that without requiring other people's permission. To go back to the hype in the studio models, I think the media narrative right now really taps into the division on the subject. And it makes a lot of sense, because you get a lot more views, you get a lot more readership, by kind of tapping into the extreme ends of the argument. But I think this is just phase one. I made that film on my own because I was just making a personal project, and nobody knew who I was. I didn't have any kind of weight in drawing people to donate their time to work with me, on an art project. So I was forced to do it on my own. And luckily over the years, I've been able to develop the skills in editing and in audio engineering and, those sorts of things, as well as in the last 3.5 years of working in pre-production with real directors, great commercial and film directors. I've been able to learn a lot about their process, how you take a creative brief, break it down, storyboard it, sizzle it, how to work with producers. So I've been fortunate on that end too. But I think once this hype phase is over, what we're going to see is something much less contentious than it is now. I think you're going to see people like me working with creative teams. I know that working with people that have talents beyond mine in specific areas of filmmaking would make my film better. If I were to work with a stylist, they wouldn't be bringing clothes to the set, but they certainly can pull image and consult for me. And I can use those references to have great styling in my films and across the board. Hair and makeup, send me references, help me understand the emotional context of what it is that you're going to do. And so once we have budgeted, I think you got to get one out of the can or one into the can first in order to get people's attention. Then if you can get budget, then I see teams developing. And the solo film studio, number one, it's a great news story. It's not optimal long term. It's not optimal in achieving the best that you can achieve. And then to circle back, once this hype cycle is over again, we're going to find out it's the very same story that people have been telling forever. If you went to film school or you studied any form of art, you were always told all along, it's the story. It's not the tools. It's not even necessarily the medium. It's not the camera. It's the story. And it's funny how that narrative has changed as soon as the tool became AI. It's like we left that understanding out of fear and a lot of hype. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we can see that it's coming back to story. However you materialize your story, if it's a good one, people will respond to it. If you make eye candy that's gorgeous to look at, but there's nothing underneath, I think we know what happens with that, right? It doesn't last long. It can't endure. People aren't connected to it. So I think we're just coming full circle. I think the fears of job loss, although serious, and for sure there's disruption, I think you'll see people embed themselves into new roles in the new media generation system. I can see DPs and cinematographers working on AI creative projects by lending their knowledge and experience and not being laid off, just having a different role. Yeah. So although I'm highly empathetic and I understand where the fear comes from, I have a different view of how this works out long term. And I think it's a much more ethical approach or a much more ethical endpoint than is being portrayed currently. I think there's going to be a whole industry shift, but we'll have a lot of new jobs too.
Yeah, I believe in new job creation. I believe in empowering new storytellers. I believe in indie film. I think this whole movement is all about the independent film spirit because they're bucking the trends of the gatekeepers of Hollywood. And now there's new distribution models that don't rely on Hollywood. And, vertical storytelling is one of those, rapidly increasing markets for AI filmmakers to enter, a market that's monetized. And so what I'm seeing is a natural progression of this experimentation to storytelling to, the question of, well, how do I make money at this? And that vertical storytelling option, microdramas with a rising trend in AI microdramas is where a lot of people are landing because there is opportunity, there's distribution, it's vertical, it's on your phone, it's not on the big screen, like a movie, which I love, but that's the trend. It's like experimentation, storytelling. Okay, now how do we make money, find the market, find the money? And what's interesting is I have a lot of conversation with AI filmmakers is that they create an identity and a look through their empowerment through these tools. And then they get picked up by a studio that is housing a lot of different AI filmmakers. And then they work on other people's IP. So they are somewhat losing their new identity by taking the job with these studios where they're working on other people's IP. And then as the major studios are now developing with their current IP, recruiting AI filmmakers into roles, they're going further away from their own expression and kind of indie spirit. And so I guess it's a natural progression. It's a phase and kind of realizing where are you in this timeline. But that's, to me, it's great on the monetization side because it's necessary because you want to be in a functioning economy, but it's also losing some of that indie spirit of personal creativity. So do you see that trend? Do you understand that trend?
I do. And I think it's going to come down to what part you're passionate about. There's a lot of great visualization people and they're fantastic, using the technology, but maybe they're not necessarily writers or they haven't studied cinema, they focus on into other areas of things. And so, maybe that's where their passion lies. And so they fit perfectly into somebody else's pipeline in terms of helping the studio or somebody else bring their story to life. So I think it comes down to what brought you here. For me, I love to create images. I've done it my whole life. I did it as a photographer. It's about trying to tell a story in an image. When I was a photographer, now it's about trying to tell a story in the moving image. And how do I, do the best that I can to bring those stories to life and challenge myself to do it in a way that has the potential to connect with people. That's really been the new challenge in using AI and it's new. I mean, Dance 2 and Claim 3, the new models and, the new Google Omni, they're still just in their infancy. And we've just begun to have the ability to try and have human performance and connection. And then to go back again to your earlier statement about, maybe this content doesn't get shown on the big screen and we have different distribution models. And I only go to the theater to see a certain type of film for a certain type of experience. And I think those things will still happen. I think there are films that you want that inclusive experience of sitting in an audience and being wowed by the beauty of the format of film in a theater. And then I think there are others that work just as well, online, short form storytelling or small screen storytelling. I think we'll see all of that evolve. And I think this evolution mirrors a lot of what we already understand. It's just rewrapped. And we saw what podcasting did to talk radio. It's a really good example to look at. I mean, it became about the individual creator, their personalities and their ability to engage with people on topics that the mainstream maybe wasn't covering. And that sounds very much to me about what AI filmmaking is going to be able to do. We're going to have voices from all over the world that maybe weren't included before to tell these unique stories. We can get beyond these, first world driven, formulaic films that help to mitigate studio risk. And I understand that. I mean, I think no films would get made, if there weren't funders, up to this point in time. I mean, that game's changed a little bit. So I'm empathetic to that. If I was putting my money behind something, I want some risk mitigation too. But now we can mitigate this risk and allow all of these other new types of stories to be told. And look what that does to the audience. For the first time in your life, you get to hear these stories that you only ever had access to before if they were the top 1% in the world. And it was an international film that won an Oscar, was the only way you ever heard of these films coming out of different communities. So again, I'm very optimistic on what this does, how it increases the volume of filmmakers, which if they all hire one or two people to help them at minimum, starts to create a completely different economy, maybe ultimately with more people working in film around the planet, than the 200 to 300 people that are working on, the big studio stuff.
Okay, let's take a break.
The CLOWD Film Fest invites AI filmmakers from around the world to submit their short films to an international competition and festival built for what's next in cinematic storytelling. The CLOWD Film Fest will premiere in Southern California the week before LA Tech Week at the Alex Theatre in Glendale, California, for its first annual AI Film Festival event, October 7th and 8th. AI filmmakers who wish to submit their works for consideration should visit cloudfilmfest.com, that's with a W, and at hike.com, that's with 2 I's. So, stop posting and start submitting. The final deadline is August 19th, 2026.
And we're back. Yeah, I speak about the formulas of Hollywood with the failure of Moana, which was a remake of an animated classic that didn't need, frankly, to be remade as live action, and it totally failed. So, Hollywood not only recycles, these formulas, but they upcycle the same content with a live action remake. And, all of that, the millions of dollars, oh my gosh. Think of how many indie films that could have been made, or AI films, or just new stories, new directors, and it's just a, opportunity squandered. So there's hard lessons being learned, exciting lessons being learned, certainly with kind of YouTuber filmmaker coming into play. And now, oh my God, let's look at Reddit and YouTube and all these other platforms for stories. It's like, well, that's great. That's a kind of a renaissance. And this is what studios should be doing. It's like, where are the next stories coming from? Because what they've been serving up has been stale and has a recurring effect of low performance. And, they watch those numbers and they go, yeah, we can't do Moana 2 at this point, live action. So
Right.
What's next? Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it feels to me like we're on the cusp of like what film was in the 70s, probably the greatest film era ever. The amount of different stories and the amount of different things that you can watch from that era, before things really consolidated is amazing. And it feels like maybe we're headed back there now, even at the studio level. So, in all of
Right.
filmmaking, because
I hope.
you see what's happening with backrooms and obsession. And these are, horror's always had a market and it always seems to do well. But working with these young guys that seem more in tune with the younger audiences and what they want, instead of like investing again in something that's a blockbuster, it's proving it to be profitable. And I think you're going to see this with AI films too. I think first, I see AI filmmaking as a separate category. Like something like anime, I don't think we have to abandon wholly one to embrace the other. I think, again, that's the media story. That's how you cause division. Am I a big fan? Do I watch a lot of anime? No, but I know other people really enjoy it. I have nothing negative to say about that art form. Does it hire less people than on a live action shoot? I'm sure. There's a lot of illustrators, but you're not closing down a street in Brooklyn and, having a crew of 50 people and hiring the police and pulling a permit. It's a different animal and we've accepted it. Same with CG. So I see what I do in AI filmmaking as something that's its own animated category. And it's not meant to replace live action. I think that's hype. Will there be crossover? Certainly. We had Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where we had crossovers between animation and live action. You're going to see AI and live action hybrids. We're going to have an infinite number of combinations. But I think what helps to smooth the hype and the argument out is it's not all or nothing. We can have AI filmmakers, and those people that enjoy watching what AI film looks like will become the audience. Those that really want to stay analog and really never left film still seek out and watch movies that are shot on film. And again, I think because our discourse is online so often and not in person, it's hard to have these kind of even rational discussions about where things are headed. And they're not as divisive and contentious, once you sit down with each other and talk about it, than what you get online. And we're all competing for commerce and we all want to make money. And so creating posts that are buzzworthy and go viral is part of that strategy. But I don't think it gets to the truth, of what's really happening in the movement.
Yeah, I think these in real life experiences are crucial because you're right. How do you build community online, which has been severely damaged as we come out of COVID, as we come out of or come into a world of disinformation, misinformation, distrust, sensationalism, outright lies, and what do you believe? But when you have a conversation with someone, you have communal experience in a movie theater, watching the same thing, all eyes on the screen and people feeling something and then talking about it afterwards and networking. That is really irreplaceable and is a catalyst, I believe, for how to elevate not only the conversation, but elevate the technology and the creativity that's possible with AI. And that's what we're trying to do with our little CLOWD Film Festival, and really appreciate you entering and sharing with us today your story. And we look forward to great things from you. And are there any projects that aren't under NDA that you could talk about, or what has been your transition in that move from working creative to obscure AI filmmaker to recognized AI filmmaker and celebrated with many laurels to, okay, now what's next?
I think the big next thing is the pressure of not being a one-hit wonder. And I've talked to a few people. I've had access to some people that I didn't have access to before that have a lot of wisdom and experience to share of being in the film industry. That's probably the biggest thing that I've won so far. And the pressure that I feel to deliver something on par with a face only a mother could love, I think is weighing heavy on me right now. I have 4 other short film scripts that have been finished for quite a while that I think, again, would do well on the festival circuit. And I've been writing for that as an outlet because I'm not really sure how to monetize short films, or even if that's, something to even consider at this point. I think making them for the sake of art and story at this point is my focus. I have my day job stuff that I work on, also getting a lot of interest from other people in developing their IP, working on, AI feature films and things like that. But personally, I have some stuff that I would like to visualize and bring into the world, and hopefully I get the same amount of gifts on those that I did on A Face Only a Mother Could Love, and they turn out great because I think the stories are great. So that's really my focus at this point in time, is to come up with something that, again, pushes the boundaries of where we're at. I don't want to just go back and try and reproduce what I did. I want to see, can I push the human performance? Can I bring the character emotions out in a way that impacts the audience? And I think that's the next step in my journey, is just trying to do that in a high quality way.
Yeah, and that's terrific. And I just want to note that if you want to carry on in that indie spirit, there's all kinds of ways to finance your films through grants and organizations and competitions. And so, there is a way to monetize your development. It's not a vacuum of no money. It's already an established industry, the indie filmmaking industry. I've been working in that industry for the last 10 years, but I come from a kind of traditional Hollywood background. So, I'm inspired by the indie movie spirit and the filmmakers in it. And I think AI filmmakers are entering into that and can be extremely prolific. I have friends who it takes 1 to 2 years to make, or if not 5 years to make an independent documentary. And here with people are making, compelling films in a lot shorter time with hardly any budget. And so again, it comes to, well, what's that story? Will it resonate? And, the whole documentary approach is interesting because there's a million stories out there, talking about history or current events and how AI can help that type of storytelling. It doesn't all have to be fantasy or, personal stories. It can be, journalism. It can be all kinds of things that AI helps with, that, not only the pre-visualization, but historical recreations and all that, which have always challenged filmmakers. It's like, well, there were no cameras in 1776. So where's that footage? It's like,
Right.
well, we can make it up now. We don't have to shoot it or recreate it with actors. We could, use AI to make that seem real or stylized, right? I mean, not everything has to be photorealistic. It can be stylized. And then it suffers less of the burden of it looks uncanny. It's an uncanny valley, right? No, it's stylized. It's an anime look. Here's the anime version of 1776. How cool would that be, right?
Very cool.
Then no one questions the story. They're just like attracting a young generation. This is actually a concept I'm working through. It actually attracts a younger generation into the history of our country, through the use of a medium where they think it's cool, that storytelling device. So all kinds of opportunity. I think this will revive indie filmmaking. The whole vertical microdrama is also a new market. So whether that's other people's IP or your own IP, there's opportunities, there's money. And, so I am encouraged that you want to continue your own work, but you're still doing your commercial work and, you just having fun. It seems, right? It's like, if this isn't fun, why are you doing it? Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a dream job. It's not without its challenges and it's not without its long hours, but I couldn't imagine a better fit for me personally, and probably a lot of other folks who, never expected to be able to have an opportunity to, speak directly to people, to kind of not have to wait to be invited to participate and, be able to create something engaging enough that people want to pay attention to it. I mean, have been a lot of other outlets for that in the past. I just don't know that today's audience, is as interested, you know, in numbers, in reading your short stories or, maybe looking at your still photography. I think this is really the ultimate medium, film, whether we can call AI film or not, AI movies. I think it's the ultimate medium, that in music, for human connection. And I'm just having my fun playing around, and I'm certainly thankful, for the feedback and the response that people have had towards my little story.
Yeah, I believe we're in a renaissance. I believe that Michelangelo and Da Vinci would have been using AI to tell stories, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they embraced all the new mediums of the time and created timeless works. And certainly Da Vinci was ahead of his time, right?
Yeah.
He's designing helicopters. It's like before we even could fly. So, what's interesting is your background as a photographer. So you developed your eye and your what I call the aesthete, the aesthetic through your traditional work, and then leverage that into AI filmmaking. And I believe that the taste that comes out of that, right? You've developed a certain, passion for how things should look and how they should be perfect and how they should be shot. And all those are huge contributions to the AI filmmaking process because it's people with your expertise, your traditional expertise that elevate the game, elevate the technology to a point where, a hack that comes in using these tools has no concept of taste or aesthetic or POV of a photographer's eyes, and you do, and it's paid off in spades, and so I applaud that effort and that background that you bring. You say you're a novice in terms of making film, but you're not a novice in terms of image making, which is a huge part of it. And so be encouraged by your legacy and don't abandon it because that has propelled you to where you are today. So I applaud that.
I think it's really interesting. I get asked, I've been asked to speak, since the festival, and I've talked to some groups. And even when I was a photographer, I would teach workshops and different things. And it's interesting how often the technical comes up in terms of, people really view what you're doing technically, as the route to creating content like you create. I've always, kind of gone the opposite route with my answer to that question. And it's about curation and having a point of view, meaning you're trying to say something. So if you're leveraging AI to write your story and you're leveraging AI like wholly, like you're not the author of the story and you're allowing the tools to iterate everything without, being behind it, I think it shows. I think AI doesn't have a point of view. It can emulate and it's really wonderful as a tool, but I think you really have to focus on those things. And I think it's about learning how to curate, which is almost an abstract concept because everybody thinks they have great taste, but it's really hard to pin people down on why they make the choices that they make. Can they explain why one image is stronger than another image? Can they explain why one clip is better than another clip? And I would challenge people to do that and to develop as something you're more aware of, because I think that's what helps you create better visual content, creating an understanding and then broadening your horizons. I didn't know who Tarkovsky was until a few years ago. And then I absorbed everything that I could get my hands on by this person, and probably the greatest master of composition, scene composition in film history to me. You have Kubrick too. So that's lofty, but to study people and understand why they made the choices they made. And then how do you apply that to your work? I think it's really about discovering your unconscious bias and what your unconscious tastes are, and not just letting your ego decide that you're superior because you like what you like without definition. I think that to me is what makes a better artist in every capacity, is having an understanding. Plus then you can flex at that and try to adopt your client's point of view. So instead of just ramming your own tastes down your client's throat or being dissatisfied with their choices, being flexible and being able to, participate in helping to create other people's visions. I think that's far more important than knowing my prompts or knowing other people who are making great art. It's more important than knowing their pipeline and their workflow. It's those aspects that I would really start to train on.
And it's the critical eye, right? It's like to be able to dissect something critically. We all went to art. Some of us went to art school. I assume you did. But yeah, you learn about critique. Your work is critiqued by your teachers, your professors. And then when you get into that commercial world, I became a creative director and had to critique other people's work, my own work, in order to sell it to the client and dissect it and rationalize it. And all that is terrific training as you get into a medium that it actually does want to be creative itself. If you don't give it the direction, it's going to take off in a direction that it just feels it wants to, and you lose control. And the more control you have with that critical eye and critical direction, certainly in how you prompt and guide it and direct it, it's going to create a better product that matches your vision. That's the other thing is vision. Being an experienced creative, you have a desired outcome in your mind that you are trying to achieve through the technology. Or someone who doesn't have that experience, they're just sitting in awe at like how this stuff creates stuff. And they lose the opportunity to really guide and invent because there's a vision of a known outcome and you're trying to reach that. And so that's we've gone through that experimentation phase of the awe and wonder and the hacks creating the AI slop, and now with professionals entering the arena that know the desired outcome, know storytelling, know character arcs, story arcs, and put that into the medium, and with that critical eye judge their own work and product. Is it telling the right story? Is it the right pacing? Is it the right music? All those things are factors in order to connect emotionally with the audience. You're not just doing this for yourself. If you're saying you're an AI filmmaker, there's an intended audience, and you can have a very personal story, but there needs to be an intent to connect because you feel there's an emotional arc in this story I want to tell, and I believe it will connect. And then how you manifest that is the magic. Right. And you're holding your breath in that audience when you're sitting there with your audience. Are they connecting? Are they're silent? What are they thinking? They're not laughing, right? All those things you're feeling in your premiere. And then ultimately they did connect in a big way. So these are important things to consider. These are important things that make people like you special and gifted and will succeed in whatever you do, whatever direction you go in. So again, I applaud your efforts and I appreciate your work and perspective and your humbleness and your approachability. It means a lot to this world and this community.
I really appreciate that. And I think I'm just trying to be myself in these interviews. I think if I were younger, I would be trying to get something. You know what I mean? I would be trying to portray somebody who would be successful if they were working for you. And I think age has really helped me. I think it's helped me in my story writing and my filmmaking too. Not that there aren't young phenoms. There certainly are people that are incredible talents at a young age. But for me, this feels like the right time in my life to have been given this opportunity. Yeah. And I think I'm really appreciative of all of the response. Anyone's interest in asking me questions as if I'm an authority on any of it, feels pretty good. And so I just try and give my honest answer back and to not mislead and to just, I'm not entirely sure. And I don't know that any artist is entirely sure what the process is that led them to create something. It's a mix, some of it's inspiration, some of it's derivative, much of it happens on the fly while you're creating it too. And so I think, rather than proclaim mastery over everything, I think just being honest helps other people, go a lot further in terms of learning what they want to learn.
Yeah, I agree. Creativity can and should remain enigmatic. And I think that's the magic being creative, is that it's not completely understood and it's not something that is fully learned in college or art school. There has to be some element of a gift. And then through proper training, you learn how to master your gift. And with these new tools, that is accelerated. So I think remaining enigmatic gives value to that creator, to that author, to that writer, and that's special. And that's something that can't be taken away by the quote unquote machines. And that's a reason to keep pushing the envelope in terms of where this type of storytelling is going. So Robert, thank you so much for joining us today. And we will look forward to more great things from you. And hopefully you can come out to our festival in the fall, but we'll see how the contest goes and good luck with that. I'm not a judge. We have 16 judges who are going to judge the work, but as the founder of the festival, I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with someone who has really achieved some terrific things with their creativity. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm honored, to be able to participate in the festival. It looks fantastic. My experience so far has been amazing in terms of communication back and forth, and, getting an opportunity to speak to you, has been wonderful. And so, yeah, thank you again.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for catching these special editions of CLOWD Masters. We hope you find these interviews interesting. We certainly do. I certainly do. And speaking of cloud, submissions close August 19 and judging will begin then. So stay tuned on public voting on the Rad TV platform. In fact, go there right now and subscribe to the CLOWD Film Fest channel. If you have an AI film you want to submit, it's not too late. There are 2 more links in this post, one to our site, cloudfilmfest.com, and our submission site, which is hike.com. That's with 2 I's. Our event is developing nicely with panel discussions and screenings of all the finalists, an award show, and networking opportunities. So pay attention to what's going on with those announcements. It takes place at the Alex Theater in Glendale, California, which is a 100-year-old movie palace that is just freaking gorgeous. I recently visited and saw the renovations that have taken place there, and what a venue for us. So check out the Alex at thealex.com. And special shout out to Miles Williams, the artistic director, and his team, who are doing a fabulous job supporting our film festival. So passes will be on sale soon, and we'll see you at the next CLOWD Master premiere. And if you live in SoCal, see you at the Alex in October.
To learn more about CLOWD Film Fest, visit cloudfilmfest.com. That's cloud with a W.
Subscribe to our Media Slam newsletter and learn more about the intersection of design, content, and technology.
CurtDoty.co. Branding, marketing, and product development.